This week's reading was titled Capitals of Unreality by James Howard Kunstler, and it basically explained the irony of how mass consumption and industrialism eliminated the pre-modern way of life, the closeness of neighbors, businesses, and cities, and it also introduced an entirely new market that basically came about because of the new absence of traditional and modest America that was created and because of by the millionaires, non-working people, powerful figures, things like that, not your average American. So the first quote that I chose, it's from page 221. It's a little bit long, and it's about Disneyland. So I'm just gonna read it real quick. It reads, they'd flock to Disneyland at Anaheim, or later Disney World in Florida, and walk down Main Street and think, gee, it feels good here. Then they go back home and tear down half the old buildings downtown and pave them over for parking lots, throw a parade to celebrate a new Kmart opening, even when it put 10 local merchants out of business, turn Elm Street into a 6-lane cross-town expressway, pass zoning laws that forbade corner grocery stores in residential neighborhoods, and set back rules that required every new business to locate on a 1-acre lot until things became so spread out you had to drive everywhere. I really liked this quote. I feel like that was one of the first quotes that I read that it made his full argument click. And so I feel like this quote truly represents how, like victims of mass industrialization and capitalism, basically how they are also participants in it, usually unintentionally without them being aware of it, but still nonetheless they're fueling the capitalism that they are not benefiting from. And so basically, like, once we look at this and understand what he's saying, they're basically used as pawns, distracted by the new development's excitement, and they're quite literally like not paying attention to their surroundings and the consequences of allowing companies to industrialize their neighborhoods. The companies treat them as high-valued consumers by these companies, because capitalism is nothing without consumption, but these people actually experience the majority of the negative side effects of this industrialization. I think it can even be true that like many Americans didn't realize the mass industrialization and destruction happening in their states and in their neighborhoods until it was like on such a wide scale that it was physically impacting their lives and they couldn't ignore it anymore. For instance, like construction going on, a lot of more traffic, more people in your local supermarket than there would have been, higher rent and mortgage prices, higher taxes, just a whole bunch of different like clear signs, I think, that made people realize just how much of America and elsewhere was being industrialized. But yeah, like ultimately I think the public was and is manipulated to strive towards and like desire a more futuristic, developed society, leaving the old, like maybe outdated society behind. But this is all for the benefit of companies who wanted to like now profit off of this new lacking sector. This is a new market for them, basically creating like a fantasy land of like old modest America. So yeah, the second quote that I found was on page 239, and it reads, I would even presume to summarize what it all signified to them, the idea of a true commodity organized at the human scale, along with a feeling of secure remoteness from the so-called modern. So this is like a different example, kind of like what we talked about before, but this is for Woodstock. And basically many visitors of Woodstock were, ironically, unironically, the same people benefiting from the enterprises that they were seeking to escape from, including things like shopping malls, housing developments, just industrialization. And so this false sort of like escaping modern life to live a more modest life for a weekend is a facade at best, because these people participating are basically like happy with reaping the monetary profit and benefits from the industrial development of America, all at the expense of other Americans, usually low-income Americans, also at the expense of like wildlife. So basically what they're doing is just like cosplaying a simpler, tax-free, modest life with other rich people, while working Americans are struggling because of the destruction of their local economies, and honestly probably wouldn't be able to attend an event like Woodstock. It just comes across as very tone deaf. Um, like even more so when you consider that this reality of modest American life, this could be feasible and attainable if powerful figures, like weren't so money hungry and fixated on the ultimate capitalist structure, and instead, like if they invested their money and time into like a supportive, successful society that cares for everyone, you know, we would be able to obtain this fantasy land in real life rather than, making it a market for companies and people who are already rich to benefit off and, profit off of it. So yeah, I thought this was a very interesting reading though. I really did like it. My question after reading this is basically like, at what point, how do consumers decide at what point they should stop consuming, like ploys like this? Like, Disney World, for instance, like it genuinely brings enjoyment and amusement to people, to regular people like us. And so it just makes me wonder, like, at what point are we not allowed to partake in these amusements anymore and these enjoyments anymore for the sake of, wanting to improve the structure of our society in America, basically. And like, how do we prioritize that while also still wanting to live, a fun life, while also, wanting to live a life that, like my neighbor does. Like my neighbor's going to Disney World, but I'm choosing to not go to Disney World because I now realize that, it was created to take advantage of us.